And you're on now.
Oh, just a moment. I have to pull my pants up.
Oh.
Well, I wish. Oh.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You're right from the top. You're good to go.
Well, this is 12th of November, and I just want to document something about what I've been following up and documenting for nearly 40 years about an environmental watergate here in New Brunswick, where the experts, quotation marks, in the provincial government have been covering up what I've been documented for the last 40 years, the most serious environmental crimes. And it concerns the illegal dumping of vegetation control chemicals on farmland to get most of the farmers off the land. And the only farms they want to leave here is those they've been grooming very careful over the last few decades, for over 40 years. They are so-called flagships. Those big farms they have been supporting with millions of dollars in grants and subsidies, whereas the rest of us, they want us out of the picture. You either farm the Monsanto way, or we make sure that you get out of there. This has been all along the agenda of the successive provincial governments, what I've been documenting for the last 40 years. And here, for example, we see the second cut of a hayfield that had been cut in July. Over on that side, there was a bumper crop. I took pictures. Timothy, this high. Here, this whole plain here, nearly wiped out. Only 1/3 of the crop on here. This ground has been treated all the same. It has had over the last few decades over 250 tons of manure and composted manure per acre, more than any of the other farmland around here. But I'm not supposed to get a second cut, and what really easily would be achievable, a third cut from my land. So what did they do? After I took the first cut off, it turned a little bit dry, but it was not serious. I've seen drier period here. The early first few years when I was here, where we didn't have any rain for about a month and a half, and the ground was bone dry. There still was a second cut of Timothy coming up, and a second cut of clover, about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. And what do we see here? Now, about pretty 10 weeks ago, we started getting heavy rains. There's lots of moisture there. Perfect conditions to grow clover, to grow grass. But since the Timothy and the clover had been damaged with selective herbicides, as you see here, the Timothy, this is all what we get out of Timothy here. Half burnt off. It does not tiller anymore. It does not tiller anymore. And those chemicals in the ground that show the damage. One indicator is the blue, the purple knots on the Timothy. Plus, first cut, the Timothy, the tops were about this long, 5 to 6 inches long, because of those chemicals that have been dumped on. Now you get the seed tops on the Timothy only about 1.5 inches, and it won't tiller anymore. So how much of a second cut hay crop can we get here? Same way, most of the clover, it never even came up. It just keeps crawling around on the ground. I've been since 1981 through the Department of Agriculture and the Department of the Environment to have some tests made, but they screwed up year after year. After I had the field people here, we looked at the damage. We narrowed it down to 2-3 different chemicals that could have been responsible for, and they promised me they would send the samples to Fredericton and do the necessary test. But as soon as the samples ended up in Fredericton at the Department of Agriculture or the Department of the Environment, they did tests that didn't apply at all. And or they threw the samples out, or they let the samples sit for a month, month and a half, unrefrigerated in the office, and then to test for chemical compounds that have a degrading time of 3 to 4 weeks. And afterwards they would turn around and tell me, oh, what do you want? We did anything we could do. And but as I say, this Department of the Environment and the Department of Agriculture and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they're the biggest waste of taxpayers' money. And many of those people, those officials, there should have been a criminal prosecution. But I guess the way the justice system in this country is, you know, fat chance to get anything done. Everything has to be on agenda. And right now it makes some headways about Agenda 21. And but the Agenda 21 has been already a long time in the making. Just only so many people, they are so blind. And if people don't start waking up and start paying attention to their daily food, who is producing it, and what is being done to drive the sustainable, organic farmers out of the picture, what shall I say? People get the government they deserve, and if they don't wake up, good night Canada, good night North America. Here you see chemical damage, mutations. Can you see it?
Very well.
Mm-hmm. And other chemicals that are being dumped on are vegetation control. For example, about 30 years ago I had the herbicide guide, and at the time they had already chemicals like when you got a lawn and you are tired of mowing it every other week, you mow it once in the spring, you put the chemical on, you spray the chemical on, and until the fall you don't have to mow your lawn anymore. It stays nice and green, but it doesn't grow anymore. And here, look, when you see there, that's the growth since the middle of July on fertile, deep ground. But as I say, I'm not in bed with the Department of Agriculture. But they have all covered up here in New Brunswick over the last decades that has brought New Brunswick, a region that at one time was self-sufficient in food production, has brought it now, thanks to the diligence and the expertise of the New Brunswick Department of Agriculture, that has brought this province to a situation where we are now importing 90% of the food into the region. And now those idiots, they try to bail out the finances of the province and allowing gas companies coming in and doing shale gas fracking, and with all the inherent danger. Once the damage is done, it cannot be undone anymore. Once the groundwater is ruined, and all the environmental damage because of the toxic fluids that are being used. And under the very best conditions, they can expect maybe $200 million annual in royalties from the gas companies. When we start again producing our food in this province, that would mean at least an annual input into the provincial economy of between $6 and $7 billion. And we don't have to do it the Monsanto way. We don't have to do it the high chemical way to fatten the bank account of the shareholders in the chemical companies. We can produce a healthy food here in the province for the people. We can produce it in a sustainable way. And but I guess this might change the situation for the whole healthcare industry that swallows up now about 40% of the provincial budget. It's not a healthcare industry, it's a sickness industry. They want a steady stream of sick people in this province. That's the biggest money makers, and that's the biggest part of the economy. But as I say, what can you do when people are so stupid and have become so brain dead with fluoridization of drinking water and all the chemical additive in the food processing and so? What can you do? You know, I'm just about, it's a point in time where just about nearly ready to pack it in. See here, Ken, what I was saying again, second cut. August, September, October, pretty near about 3.5 months. That's the total growth on deep, fertile ground. Since 1975, I've been in contact with every Minister of Agriculture. They promise, promise, promise. And then when push comes to shove, there's nothing, just empty promises. And this is what we have been getting all along from our political representatives, the politicians. And the last one in the line of Ministers of Agriculture is Mike Olskamp. I contacted him before the election, brought to his attention my documentary about the horrendous things that had been done to my animals. By the way, you can see that on the internet. Just Google Farmer's Ordeal, 75-minute documentary. And Michael Olskamp promised me that he would look into it when he would get elected. And after he got elected and he became the Minister of Agriculture, I phoned him up and he said to me, I have full confidence in the experts in my department. So much for the expertise, and so much for the promises of any kind of a politicians. Well, I'm getting a kind of all over the place. See this here, in order to cover up for the poisoning of the land, deliberate introduction of weeds. You see the way it grows in patches, that's fall dandelions. Normally, the best way of weed suppression, weed control is suppression. But when the cultured plants, you know, the main forage plants like timothy and clover, when they have been damaged, badly damaged or killed off, what do you get? There's lots of room for the weeds to grow, you know. And that's what you get here. Supposed to be the second cut. See all those patches there? I took a few hundred photos before I was taking the first cut off, and I documented the way this land has been sabotaged. Whole strips you could see like somebody had been walking through and thrown by the handful out the wheat seeds together, most of the time with the granular selective herbicide that kills the timothy and kills the clover. And that's about 2/3 of this whole hayfield. They've messed up. As I say, I have the other photos. I got them on the camera and I got them burnt on disk, and we have to edit them in later on. Hardly any fall dandelions. Here you got a big patch again, and then as you see, those patches, they are all over the place. But this here has been now for the last 15 years. I used it as pasture. I top dressed it a few times with composted manure and with manure. And as I say, this should have produced the best hay fields here in this valley. But Werner is not supposed to have anything good here. He doesn't know how to farm, and this comes from experts and from gossip of people who have become so lazy to grow their own food, and they're looking for the government for handouts. I did not come here to looking for handouts from the government. I came here to farm and contribute to the economy. But the last 37 years, you know, the amount of hate crimes I've encountered by a certain clique, you know, and it is unbelievable. And they've done it to the decent people that at one time were farming here, have done the same thing. And most of them, they killed them before their time. When I came here and I saw so many of those hard-working farmers, most of them, they had heart attacks, they got lung cancer here in this valley along the road. 4 of my neighbors within a mile and a half, they died of lung cancer. And all were in their early and mid-50s, and 2 happened to be non-smokers. There is another red herring where they want to blame lung cancer on smoking. Most of the lung cancer is on smoking. But as I say, we got here in the so-called science community, scientific horse for hire. So many deadbeats I've encountered. It is unbelievable. But have a look at my documentary, Farmer's Ordeal. And I put my nose to the grindstone. I did not want to do autopsies on animals. I just wanted to stop the killing. And every step of the way, I was being hampered and hindered by the so-called expert community, by the veterinarians, by the crop specialists in the Department of Agriculture, the SPCA, what kind of a racket they got going, where they run basically a tag team racket to